Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Facebook Live with Councilwoman Tina Stevens and Delegate Wendy Gooditis. My name is Allison Gilbreth, and I'm going to be facilitating this wonderful conversation today. I'm on the Voices policy team. I do our foster care policy work. Today's talk is part of Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. We're just so excited. We've had a lot of really great conversations today, this week, and looking forward to this conversation today. And what we need from you all as our participants watching, we need you to do a couple of things that will help more people watch this video. We need you to like this video, so go ahead and click that like button. And we also need you to click that share button if you're really liking what you're hearing. Probably the most important thing today is engage with us in the comment section. So if you have a particular question for either Councilwoman Stevens or Delegate Gooditis, go ahead and put that in the comment section. Or if you have, if you're really liking what they're saying, you can put something like, oh, absolutely yes. Or if you have a follow-up question or you want to comment back and forth to other people who are watching this, feel free to do that. We want engagement. So with that, I am going to get us started. So we're going to start with Delegate Gooditis, and it's going to be the same question for the both of you. And it's going to be, can you tell everyone listening why you wanted to run for public office?
Well, I wasn't the only person to have a particular response to the presidential elections in 2016. After that day in November, I was concerned about the values of the country going in a direction I was afraid that they would go in. I was afraid. And I started looking more closely into my local representation, including my representative in the House of Delegates. And I found that not only did I not agree with the way he voted for the 6 years that he was in, but no one was running against him. And so I kept going to Democratic committee meetings and saying, someone has to run. And people started saying, you run, Wendy, you run. And finally I was just like, and my husband started poking me. And I ran because someone had to. It was, talk about conviction. And I think my class of 2017 in the House of Delegates, there were 16 new Democrats in the House of Delegates that year. And we all had this, oh my gosh, we have to do something. Mm-hmm. And that's basically how I got here.
Well, thank you. That's great. And apologies for the folks of you listening. This is very COVID time, so you might have heard my dog just walk in and jump in, so he's going to hang out with us while we're having this chat. But same question for you, Councilwoman Stevens.
Thank you so much for having me. So I got involved. I don't consider myself as a politician. I am an advocate by heart. I've been advocating since I can remember, young, early on in life. I've always had a passion to be able to fix things, to help, to be a nurturer. And so with that being said, I live here in Stevens City. There was a seat that came open. The lady that was in that position decided that she would be retiring and take a paid position within the clerk's office. So with that being said, a position came available, and I was excited to be able to put my name in the hat. Like you, Delegate Wendy, everyone said, do it. If you don't do it, who else is gonna do it? I am a firm believer that a lot of great work is done right here on the local level. And so I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. We'll give it a try. I'm already, I'm already in the realm of advocacy and a community organizer, a community leader. And so why not take those skills that I have and be able to impact our community on a level of an elected official. And I do like the fact that I can play a part in some of the decision-making roles that will directly impact our community, and to be a person of color and representation.
Thank you. It's so interesting to hear how both of you had very similar, everybody else is telling you, like, you are the person you've been waiting for. You need to just do it. I think that's really amazing and telling too, right? And also for folks of you listening, you might see us turning our cameras on and off. We all kind of have wonky internet these days, so just bear with us. We'll press on, but you might see some stopping and going as that happens. So the next question that I have is really related to Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week, and I'll start, or whoever wants to answer first can jump in, and then we can go back and forth. But how do you feel in your current role you're able to serve Black and Brown communities, and or hope to serve in the future?
Well, in the House of Delegates, oh, sorry, Tina.
No, please go.
In the House of Delegates, we are fortunate in that the last two elections have brought more and more delegates so that our population more closely reflects the population and the diversity of Virginia, and that's a great thing. One of the great things is that we have the Virginia Black Legislative Caucus, and this is a group of delegates and senators of color who have experienced a different life than I have experienced. And as they've always stood very strongly for legislation that would benefit all Virginians and not leave the minorities or the less fortunate people behind. So they have a list of priorities for this session, this special session. The governor has called us back into special session starting August 18th. And it was originally to deal with basically the holes that COVID blew in the Virginia budget. We will be dealing with that, but I'm very thankful to say we'll be dealing with systemic racism and police and criminal justice reform. And it's my plan to follow the lead of the Virginia Black Legislative Caucus, because they know from their lives and their experience what is necessary and what might work. Also, talking about wonky broadband, the statistics, there's so many people in Virginia who do not have broadband, right? It either doesn't exist, or they can't afford it, or they don't even have a device that they can use it on. And COVID has shown more and more how absolutely vital it is for certainly for your business and for your work, but for your health, telemedicine, for your child's education in this time of COVID. And we must make sure that systemic racism does not deny people of color access to broadband. And so reaching more people, more Virginians with that is something that matters to me. And another area that I worked on, I shared legislation with Senator Jennifer McClellan, who happens to be one of our candidates for governor, about supporting our domestic workers more strongly. So we were able to remove the exemption that said that you didn't have to pay domestic workers minimum wage. Most domestic workers are women. Many, if not most, are women of color. And it has been very unfair that these women who work so hard and care for us and care for the most precious members of our families, our children. In my case, my 90-year-old parents who just died in May, but I had wonderful people care for them for the last 3 years of their lives. Those women deserve to be paid enough to live, and they deserve health care. And so this session, we didn't get the health care benefits for them that I think we ought to have, but I'm going to be carrying legislation again, working for those women. So those are some of the ways that I'm trying to actively help end systemic racism and raise people who not only need it, but deserve it.
Thank you for sharing. There's a lot of things I want to follow up on with you, but I'll first have Councilwoman Stevens share with the same question.
Okay, so I will tell you that I have hit the ground running. There have been young visionaries here that wanted to really express their fury and their upset emotions about, and anger, quite frankly, about the murder of George Floyd. And I want to be clear that, you know, this movement and the Black Lives Matter movement is really important. And I know that with young people, they want answers. They don't want generations of, hey, change is going to come, change is going to come. These young people want change, and they're going to make it happen now. And so part of my role as a leader is saying, okay, let's do this. Let's also do this in a way that we can change policy, that we can have your voices heard. So not only are we marching, but we are having some actionable commitments. Let's get these things aligned, let's get these things organized, and let's do it in a way that we can have some measurable outcomes. So we actually, in request of young visionaries, 20-year-old visionaries, wanting to do a march here in Winchester, and had every thought to do everything they wanted to do. And I said, hey, you know, we have the insurance, we want to sponsor this event. We want to hear the voices of young brown and Black children, but also white allies as well. So I want to be clear that in this fight for justice, we have people that are alongside of us that are brown and Black, but also white as well, that want racial equality. They want to break down these systemic systems that keep brown and Black people oppressed. And so with that being said, I have done everything in my power in the last few weeks alone, just organizing events, making sure that we can bring awareness to the fact that this movement and where we are right now is not because George Floyd was murdered. It is a collection of many years of Black people that have been killed. Black, and you know, you talk about, and not only Black males, but Breonna Taylor as well. So we have Black men and women that are being murdered, that are being impacted disproportionately when it comes to systemic racism. It is happening in our schools, it's happening in our governments, it's happening in our, right in our backyards. These things are happening. If we don't take a stand to gather and to organize and to involve other people to be on this train of racial justice, then, you know, we only delay our opportunities to have justice now. And so what I have done definitely on the grassroots level is when young people come to me and say, this is what I would like to do, this is something that bothers me, even older people, this is what bothers me, this is what I'm upset about, let's put those in words. Let's put that in paper. Let's put that to action. Because I think at this point where we are right now in 2020, we don't have time. Marching is awesome. We need to march. We need to bring awareness. We also need to change policy, legislation. And the way that we do that is by holding our elected officials accountable. We also have to include people of color in this conversation. I'll tell you just in a small kind of snippet, I also
Oops, Councilwoman Stevens, we've lost a little bit of your sound. Let me try to maybe stop your video, and then I'll ask you to restart it so that you can, we can probably hit
sorry, it cut off.
No worries, we hear you loud and clear now, and I'm gonna get you to start
Okay.
your video back up.
And where did I stop?
You were going, girl. You were talking about what youth need to do on the next steps. And if you want to click accept on that start video, there we go. We have you back.
So, with that being said, young people are not going to take, change will come. Young people know that change is here and the opportunity to do that is now. They're not going to wait other generations and other times for other people to be able to do this. They want it and they want it now. So with that being said, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can do to support these young people, to help them, on their journeys to racial equality and to racial justice, but also to help them understand, that they do have support and they do have backing. But I do think in terms of having some of this change, we've got to have, we have to hold our elected officials accountable, and people of color are in this equation. The first African-American woman to run and win right here in Stevens City, and I made history. So by doing that, it shows other people that they can affect change. They can bring their voices to the table to influence the decisions that go on in our communities. I'll tell you another thing, Percy, and just in a short snippet.
Right there, just so we have enough time to answer our
quiet, guys. Sorry. I'm glad you did that, because my nephew down here.
That is okay. And again, for folks listening, this is part of a community doing these talks from home and all of the things. I think it shows our real lives. We have a lot of things going on that are impacting our ability. And Delegate Gooditis, you were talking about broadband access, and what an example right here where the three of us have, the ability to have internet. We have computers, but we are still struggling. So imagine for families that are in your communities that are of lower income and their access to technology, internet, broadband, and also the ability to really learn. I mean, families are certainly under a lot of stress right now. Children are certainly experiencing a lot of trauma right now from many different avenues and family trauma.
Yes.
So much of what both of you were talking about was really about being inspired by young people and how now is the time to act. Delegate Gooditis, you talked about the plans for state advocacy in 2 weeks when you all will be in special session, and Councilwoman, you talked about local action. And so the question that I have for both of you now is really about how are you getting that input to know what is the priority for Black and Brown communities, particularly in your areas, and what does that look like in session, out of session? And I think for a lot of folks who are watching, they really feel disconnected from legislators unless they're in that circle. So what advice do you have for them listening to be engaged with you?
Well, it's hard in the time of COVID when we're not going, there aren't a lot of events, and we're not going to a lot of events. I love to go to events and meet constituents and all Virginians. But I have had the great honor of being present at a Black Lives Matter march in Winchester. I'm going to say 6 weeks ago. I can't remember the date, Tina. And one in Loudoun County on Father's Day. And both of them, what is so moving is the young people. A couple of young people I've stayed in touch with them, and trying to put them in touch with members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus who can really help them focus on pieces of legislation that they're interested in. Another thing that I've tried to do, there have been 2 discussions. Mayor David Smith, Winchester Mayor David Smith, has been moderator and has been very much involved in conversations between our law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs and the community. The first one was held at Shenandoah University. The second one was just this past Saturday. It was held at the Douglas School in Winchester. I went to both. My comment / question was the same. It was about citizen review boards. We are fortunate in this area. For the most part, our law enforcement chiefs and sheriffs are they're hardworking and they're understanding, and there's lots of good training because we're in a fairly well-to-do area, which is not necessarily true for all of Virginia. But it doesn't mean, even if they were perfect, even if it was perfect, my stance is, isn't it good just plain for community relations? Isn't it good as a preemptive circumstance to have a citizens review board, so that the people who pay them are the same people who pay me, and I'm answerable to those people, and they should be as well. I have a hard time understanding why a citizens review board is just an instant, oh, we don't need that. So I will keep pressing that. It's going to be, they're popping up all over Virginia now, the conversation about them. Again, I know I keep saying Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, but these are people who know the subject, who've lived it, whose constituents live this every day. It's something that they're going to be talking about, and I will be following their lead. But I want to be invited to community conversations about race, about systemic racism, about police reform, criminal justice reform. When I know those conversations are going to exist, I would love to be involved.
Great. So for folks who are listening, in the comment section, if you live in this area, or even Winchester to me is like sort of rural Virginia. So I'm sure Delegate Gooditis and Councilwoman Stevens wouldn't mind traveling a little bit to hear good conversations, because they're probably similar conversations that are happening in communities that are neighboring. So if you're one of those, put them in the comment section, or I will also put both of their contact information in the chat box so that you know who to reach out to, because it's about, sometimes we need to build new tables, sometimes we need to bring people to the table. And so that's what we're talking about today as part of Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. So same question for you, Councilwoman Stevens. How are you seeking input from the community? And how do you form what you believe are the priorities for Black and Brown communities in your leadership?
So through my leadership, I actually do involve the communities. And so, having I really am as accessible. I have emails come in often. I just had an email come in last week about what people are calling defunding the police, which is not, in my opinion, defunding the police is not the way to go. Maybe rerouting some of the funds that fund programs in our area and looking at those kind of things. But I have organized a teen summit, a race to justice. And so I get a lot of my input by meeting with young people, older people as well. And I keep saying younger people because they are more, there isn't a lot of history that's tied to their experiences. Older people sometimes have a sense of, oh, we've tried that, it just won't work. And young people are more like, you think this can work? We're going to try it. This is an answer. This is an answer to the solution. Let's try it. And so they're more apt to really dive into exploring several different ways and options to finding solutions. And so we have created a teen summit, a race to justice. It's going to be on September the 26th. We will have no more than 100 people. We're still in the very early stages of getting things modeled out. But the goal is to meet with young people and up to college age students, to find out things that are important to them, some of the worries that they have, some solutions that they have, but also just hearing like their truths, learning how to know what their truths are, to advocate for racial justice, and also to have some leadership and wherewithal to do that. And with young people, although they have a lot of this energy and they've got this burst of let's do this, leadership is very important because they do, they model after other people. They model what they see. I'm very energetic. I'm an advocate. I'm a leader. And I think that young people look up to that piece of it, and, to see how they can advocate, how they can become leaders, and how they can positively impact their communities by telling their racial truths or their stories or their lived experiences, and to have those validated, but also to be in a group of people where they may or may not have some commonalities, but can bring their voices and their ability to make change. And so my approach is go to the people that are impacted, or create avenues for them to get engaged with me. On my Councilwoman Tina page, I often invite people, send me an email. I care about your thoughts. I care about your feelings. Don't be afraid to give me a call. And so I am very accessible, and anyone that knows me knows that. If I get a call and someone says, hey, this is what happened, and I'm like, okay, let's think this through this, let's, but I always make myself accessible to hear people.
Wow. That is really awesome. And I think good for folks to hear. I know before I worked in this arena, there's a preconceived notion that legislators or council people know everything, have all the answers. And you're both shaking your head like, absolutely not. You ran for office because you're passionate about the issues. And I'm sorry, I need to plug my computer. Could you please help me with plugging it in? But we're almost out of time, but I wanted to give you both the opportunity to, summarize what you think, racial truth and reconciliation looks like in your roles, and what you hope to do as legislators, and what you want the community to know.
I would like to say, so I mentioned before, both my parents died in May. They died at home peacefully. This is not tragedy when 90-year-old people married for 64 years die within 19 days of each other. I was raised Quaker. My parents were Quaker. They worked quietly for civil rights in the 60s, and that was a part of my life. I see no reason to stop the family tradition and continue that work, which is nowhere near done. One of my main philosophies, whether we're talking about the expansion of Medicaid, or whether we're talking about even getting broadband to rural areas, whether we're talking about taking care of the domestic workers who take care of us, whether we're talking about police reform, systemic racism, my philosophy is save lives first. If I can save lives by working on mental health policy so that our people with mental health issues are cared for, if I can save lives by working on issues of gun safety, all of these things, systemic racism kills. And for me, it just fits in with my basic philosophy of save lives where we can. That's the priority. The potholes in the street are definitely, we care about the potholes as we drive over them, but that's not the priority. So let's do what we can to save lives. Working towards what our wonderful John Lewis would want us to work towards really should be our priority right now. And it certainly is mine.
Thank you. I love the potholes are not the priority right now, even though you might feel them and they feel really hard. I thought that's really impactful for me. Thank you. Same question for you, Councilwoman Stevens.
Okay, so can you repeat the question? Because I was very dived in to Delegate Wendy's answer.
As we're wrapping up, just your reflections on what Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week means to you as a leader, and what you hope to continue to do.
Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week for me means that we really, as communities, take ownership over recognizing that racial inequalities and equities happen, and that we all play a vital part in those solutions. Because I know oftentimes people will say, I don't believe that racism exists, or this doesn't directly impact me, so why should I care? And so my answer to that would be that we're all human. We all have basic needs. And a basic need and a basic right is to be able to be who you are and, be able to embrace who you are, but also to be treated fairly and human. And, when we think about racial truths, we've got to take some ownership. I mean, even here in Winchester, we have fights and struggles over monuments and streets and renaming streets, on one side it's, this is our history. And on the other sides, this was intimidation. This was, a time in the Civil War that, was just, with slavery and all that it entailed, was very gory. And it was really sad. It was sad that Black people weren't even treated as humans. We were treated as property. And so some of those mentalities are still with us within these very systems, whether it's judicial, educational, police, policing as well. But, we've got, in order to find solutions, we've got to be able to recognize that there are systems that are broken.
Councilwoman Stevens, we lost your audio again. Might work if you stop and start your video. I will do that real quick. We're having some great closing thoughts.
It stopped. Sorry.
Go. Yeah, we got you going back. And if you want to start your video.
Where did I stop at?
You were wrapping up about that racism is real and the impact.
Okay. So, yes. So, racism is real. And the sooner that we can, as a community, realize that these systems are broken, there are systems that were intentionally created to prevent Black people, Black businesses from excelling and improving their situations. The sooner that we can do that, we can move towards healing and reconciliation. And reconciliation for me is being able to have a way to repair some sort of brokenness. And, we have that capability. But if there aren't any problems, as some people will say, then how do we move towards solutions? And personally, as a person of color, as a person that is a business leader and a nonprofit founder, we need to really fund our businesses that are minority led, because many of the businesses that are people of color led, they receive lots of funding to be able to impact the communities. But these funds, although these monies actually do go directly towards, at the end of the tunnel, these monies make it to their destination, which is to, provide resources to the community. But on the same level of things, organizations that are minority led don't get the same funding. And I'll tell you, in COVID-19, when you talk about trauma, COVID-19 has been very traumatic for everyone. And I will tell you that my concern is broadband, young kids that can't do their homework or assignments. Through our program, we've served 60 families. And, we get to hear the housing insecurities, that they can't do homework because of lack of internet. But also, kids are not kids are not with their peers, and they're also not with their mentors. And that is, I think, a huge thing for young people, is that, you know, when you come to racial truth and reconciliation, it also comes to being able to support, properly be able to support our families of color that are more impacted than others when it comes to resources. So with that being said, I know that was a long answer to the question, but with COVID-19 and the impacts on our communities, these systems, broken as they are, can be repaired with some reconciliation, some acknowledgement that we can do better as communities to impact people of color.
Thank you. And thank you both for joining today and talking about racial truth and reconciliation and what that means to you. I'm grateful for your time, and I hope that those of you watching have enjoyed listening to this conversation. I know I have. There's still time to put some comments in the comment box. We'll be trying to, even if once we end this, we'll try to go through the comments and respond, and just really, really grateful. And as you're getting ready to leave, we just invite you to join us for more Racial Truth and Reconciliation Week. There are events all week as we're churning through the week. So thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you so much, Allison. And I would like to add, this is an election year, so get out and vote, vote, vote.
All right.